Hey Dev team, welcome back to Flutter with Drag. In the last episode we looked at the current programs and we got that mostly done, apart from something which I missed, but we'll fix that in this episode. And this one we're going to carry on with the app, so let's start with the recent activity. Okay, let's move on to the last section, which is our activities.dart. We can close down the other files. And so we've already got an expanded here because we want this to take up the full remaining space in our screen and push the navigation bar down to the bottom. But we don't want a container there. Instead, we're going to put in a column. And the column takes children, and the child is going to be the title of this section, which is recent activities. So text recent activities, and we can theme this straight away. We can set the style to be theme of context dot text theme dot headline 1. Okay, and that puts that in as we wanted. That column is going to need to be aligned correctly because we want recent activities over to the left hand side. So we're going to put cross-axis alignment start. Okay, and that will eventually push that over when we add the next bits in. So the next bit is going to be this list. Let's look at our design. We have a list of items here, and it looks like there's a container with a border, and within that border we've got a row with a few bits in it. Okay, that's easy enough. So let's make our next item a list view builder, and the item builder is going to be the context index, and we want to limit this. I'm not going to do this in the same way as we've just done the programs. We're just going to have a list of the same thing here. It's only a mock-up. So we're going to put here an item count, and we're going to hard code that into 10. And we're going to return a widget that we haven't built yet, and we're going to call it activity item. Now, because we're returning just this one item, we can change this to an expression body, and that's going to work nicely. What it will do once we've written the activity item. So let's come down here and create our stateless widget called activity item. That fixes the error, and let's go for it. It's put a container in by default. And what we need to do here is put a border around the container first, and we can do that with a decoration of a box decoration, and the decoration is going to be border all, and we're going to just set a color, and the color is going to be color 0 times ff e1 e1 e1. Okay, we're going to get a few errors here at the moment. We'll come back and sort those out after. The next thing we're going to want is a radius to the box decoration. You can set that as border.radius circular 10. And we need to set a height, I think, for this container. So we'll set that at about, just looking at the design, let's say 50. Okay, we need to get this showing up on the screen now, and we've got a problem here. If we look at our error message, it tells us that the render box was not laid out because it hasn't got a size, and there's probably 10 of those errors. The reason for that is because we've got this list view item builder in a column, and it's not really getting a size. It doesn't understand its size in context with everything else. We can fix that simply by wrapping this list view builder itself with an expanded, which will pass in the size and basically say be as big as you can. And there you go. We've now got our 10 empty boxes. Okay, I think the next thing we want to do is put a bit of padding around the whole thing. So while we're up here, before we get back to sorting out our boxes, we're going to come to our column and wrap that column with a padding, and we're going to make it symmetric. We're going to put in padding on the vertical of 20 and on the horizontal of 30. That looks okay. And then we need to put a bit of spacing in between each of these boxes, but I'm going to do that a different way just to show you it can be done a different way. So we'll deal with that in a moment. Put a comma in there. Okay, so within our container, what have we got? Well, we have a row. So the child is going to be a row, and that's going to take children. And we have, first of all, an circular box. That doesn't make any sense. Circular container with an image in it. And we've also got a circular border around that image. So we're going to have to create two containers, one inside the other, the second one being slightly smaller than the first one, and that will give us the border. So let's do this. Let's create our first container, and we're going to put a decoration in. It's going to be a box decoration, and the decoration is going to be a shape, box shaped circle. That's the quickest way of making our container a circle, and a colour. And we're going to put in the colour 0xFF2FF. That's come off the design. Okay. And we're going to put a height. Sorry, not in there, not in the decoration, in the container. We're going to put a height of 35 and a width of 35. And that should give us the background, which will be our border. And then the child of that is going to be another container. And in here, we're going to have a decoration. And it's going to be a box decoration. And same again, we're going to have a shape, box shape.circle. That'll give us our circle. And this one's going to take an image, which is going to be a decoration image. And the image is going to be one of our images from our assets. So asset image, assets running.jpg. You can pick whichever one you want. Okay. We also need to put a fit in there because we want to make sure it covers the circle in the entirety. So we'll put in a fit, box fit dot fill, and that covers the whole thing nicely. Okay, where is our border? Well, if we come to the outside container, the one with the colour in it, and we put a padding, padding is essentially going to be the thickness of our border. So if we put edge insets all 4, that'll give us a 4 pixel border all the way around and force our internal image to shrink. Okay, that looks all right. Just coming back up above the first container, so the first item in the row, we're just going to put a bit of spacing in and we're going to put a sized box and a width of 10 just to move that away from the wall. Okay, next we're going to put in some text, and the text is going to be the activity. Let's just put walking for now, and we'll put a style, text style, font size of 12, and font weight of W 900. That looks okay. Just before that, we'll then put in some spacing, again with a size box of width 20. Yeah, okay. Underneath that text, then we want an icon. So we're going to put in an icon, icons.timer, which I think is the closest. I've got size 12. Yeah. And then some text, which is going to say 30 min, because that's our time. We need to put a style onto that. So style, text, style, font size 10, font weight W 400, which is actually not right. I think we've got 300. Yeah, okay, I think that will do. And then we want to put in a icon for the sun. So icon, icons dot WB sunny outlined is the one I thought, and the size for that is going to be 12. Yep. And then finally a text, which is going to be the same as the 30 min. So I'm just going to copy the text from above, paste it below, and instead of 30 mins we're going to put 55 kcal. Okay, that's it. We just need to put some spacing in here. So working up from the bottom between the sun and the 55 kcal, we're going to put a sized box width of 5. Yep. Before the sun, copy that line actually, before the sun, then we're going to put in a size of, it's a bit larger, so double, maybe 10. Yep. And then 5 between the size box, sorry, between the timer icon and the 30 min. So that just leaves the size that we want to put between the walking and the clock. And what we want to do is we want to push everything over to the right hand side. And we can do that by putting an expanded in it. It does need a child, and so what we're going to put in is just an empty sized box. And when we save that, everything gets pushed over, which does leave us now with that last problem, that we've got a bit of spacing on the right hand side, and right under the 55 kcal we'll put in a final size box width of 20. So we could have done some of that with padding. I've just done it a different way, just to be clear that there are different ways of doing things. Okay, now we just need to put the padding in between each of the items. And so if we come up right up to our top container in our activity item, we know we can put padding in there, but padding is internal. We can also put in a margin, and we can put in here a margin of let's say edge inset symmetric. It's going to be the vertical. Let's just put 10. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, way too much because it's putting 10 in between each one. So let's put 5, which means the padding will be 10 between each one, because the first one will have 5, and then the second one will also have 5 at the top. The 2 5s adding to the 10. And that's it. That's this page taken care of. Except I think instead of our settings button being the button that takes us to the second page, I think what I want to do, and it would make more sense for the app, is for these to take us to the second page. So again, within our activity item, we take our top container and wrap that with a widget, and the widget is going to be the gesture detector. And Ontap, what we want it to do is take us to the next page. So navigator of context dot push named details, I think we called it. And now these will take us, all of these will take us to the second page. Okay, I'm happy with the way that's working. I think we can neaten it up just a little bit more by having random names here. I don't although this is a demo, I don't like the way we got walking all the time. So let's look at a different way we can handle that. And that is, in the activity item, we can create a list of activities. And we can do that by creating a static constant called activities. And we can make that equal a list of things. So you put whatever you like here. I'm going to do running, swimming, hiking, walking, one more cycling. Yeah. Okay, and then when the widget gets built, so before we return anything, we're going to make a string called activity, and we're going to make that equal a random one of the activities. So if we take activities 0, for example, the string activity will take on the 0th activity, which is the running. So if we come down to where we've hard-coded the word, well, we've hard-coded the word walking, if we change that to activity and save it, they will all change to running. And if we change this number to one of the others and save it, it changes. But instead of manually changing it, what we can do is use random, and that's an import from dart.math. So you'll see at the top it's now put in Dart math. Random.nextInteger, and the maximum number we want is the activities.length. It's however long that is. So if we save that now, you'll see that every time we load this page, we will get a random set of activities. And I think that looks a little bit better. Fabulous. Okay. Now, the one thing I don't know how I've missed this is these don't change. We need a way of changing these when you click on them. So we need to come back to the current programs. This won't take us long. And within the current programs, we are setting active, but we're never changing it. So we're going to create a function here that returns nothing. It's a private function, and it's going to be called change program. And it's going to take into it a program type, which we'll call new type. And what we're going to do is call set state. And set state tells Flutter that we're changing the state. So it needs to redraw the bits that it needs to redraw with the new state. And the new state we're changing is we're changing the active for the new type. Okay, so that becomes whatever we pass into this function, and Flutter will redraw to show that type. Now, where do we pass this function? Where do we call this function? Well, we need to pass it into our program widget, because that's going to have to deal with it. So we're also going to have to add in here a final function called Ontap, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to tap it. But the function has got to have something passed to it. If you think up here, we've got this change program. We've got to pass a new type into it. But we can do that by putting program type here. And then in our required bits, we're also going to require this dot on tap. Okay, so we've got to pass a function into it, and the function has to be a function that takes a program type. So up here we've got this error message now because we're not passing that on tap. And so what we want to do is pass into it the function change program without the brackets, because if you put the brackets it calls it as it's built, but we want it called when it's tapped. Okay, so now down here within our program widget, we can, when we return the container, we can wrap that whole thing with another widget called gesture detector. We've done this before. And on tap, what do we want to do? Well, we want to call the on tap function that we've passed in. So we just call on tap. But we want to call it with the specific type of the program. We're passing that in, so we can put program dot type. So when the gesture detector is tapped, it's going to call the onTap function and pass to it the program type of the one that's just been tapped. The onTap function is passed in. We're passing it in here and calling it up here. So now when we save that, we should be able to switch between the active program, and if we had more active programs, if we had more programs, we'd be able to do that. Right, well, with that out of the way, it's time to move on to our second page, our second screen. So if we come back to our main.dart file, under here we have the routes, we have our home page and the details page, and we have the initial route currently set to the home page. Just for the development, I'm going to change that to the details so that when we restart the app, do a hot restart, the app comes up with the details page straight away. It's just far easier for development. We're working on this page. We want this to be the first page we see as we do the development, and we'll undo that later on. So let's close these down. Now we come into our details page, where we have our scaffold column with our dates, steps, graph, info, stats, and bottom navigation. Okay, well, all's good for the bottom navigation. We don't need to worry about that. We're going to start from the top. And the one bit that's missing from the app currently is the AppBar that we've not put in. And I said I was going to handle that differently because we actually want to have an AppBar. So instead of doing that within the column, we're going to do that under the scaffold, and we're going to put in an app bar, and there is a widget called AppBar, which when we put it in and save, we get an app bar at the top, currently with an arrow and a blue background by default. So we're going to customize this, and for now I'm going to do it in situ here, and then we'll move it to its own widget, because moving an app bar to its own widget is a little more complex than moving other widgets, and we'll go through that process. So let's come into the app bar and let's start working. Well, what do we want first of all, looking at our design? Well, the background to start with is transparent. We can see through that. So let's set the background color to colors.transparent. Excellent. And we've got this grey shading under it, and that's because by default the app bar is elevated, and so Flutter automatically puts the shading in. So we need to change the elevation to 0 to get rid of that elevation, and when we save that, that disappears. Perfect, we can see through it. There is a default back button on the left hand side. It's not the one we want to use, so we're going to change this, and we can do that by setting the leading attribute here, and the leading is going to be an icon button, and on pressed is going to do something. We'll worry about that later. Let's just format this a little bit so we can see it. Okay, so the on pressed is done, and the icon, well, we need to specify an icon of icons.arrow back iOS is the closest one to the design. Of course, we need to put that within the icon widget. Icons arrow back.ios. Okay, color of that icon needs to be black, so colors.black. And I think we want to make it a little bit smaller, so we'll put size 16. Yeah, that'll do. The next part of the app bar then, scroll down here, is the title itself, and that's just a text widget. So we're going to put in the title, text, and the text, which is activity, and we'll style that up. So the style is going to be a text style, and in here we're going to set a few things. Let's go with color first of all, make sure it's black. Let's put the font weight to font weight bold, and let's put the font size to 14. Let's go with 14. Let's try that one. Yeah, that's okay. Now, as you can see, that's not centered, and it is in our design. So we can do that within the app bar by specifying the center title and passing true to that, and that will center the title for us. Finally, we've got this button on the right hand side. I don't know what it's doing, a notification button or notification icon. I don't know if it is a button or not. We'll make it as a button for now. Maybe it's notifications, and when you click it you get to see a list of activities you've taken part in or new notifications. Whatever, we're not quite sure what the designer had in mind for that. But we can do that with actions, which is a list of buttons that will appear on the right hand side of the app bar. We only need one. We're going to use a text button. It's just the quickest way of getting the flat icon. If you use an icon button, it's elevated and there's all sorts of shading issues, and while you can get around it, just using a text button is absolutely fine, even if it's not text. So the on pressed, well, we'll worry about what that does another time, if we indeed at all. and the child is going to be an icon, and the icon is going to be icons.notifications. We'll need a size for that, I think. Let's do it the same size as the arrow, 16. Okay, so that's the button in, but it's not quite as the design is. We can fix that by specifying a style to the icon button, and we're going to actually specify an elevated button style from, so it takes the default style, shape, circle, border. Okay, no changes yet. Primary, which is the primary color, and that's going to be color 0xFFFE6DA. That will change the button of that, this color of that button. And the on primary, which is the color of the actual icon within it itself, and that's going to be color 0xFFFA7A3B. Okay, so that's the colors and everything set up all right. We just need to change the size of that a little bit. So what we're going to put in here is a maximum size of size 30, 30. So the size on the X and the Y is 30 units, and the minimum size I'm going to specify as exactly the same. Save that, and that's pushed it all down. Now the button's not quite centered. We just need to make sure that the padding, because the elevated style from contains defaults of all of the paddings and everything else, and so the padding that we've got on that button is too much, which is why it's being pushed over. So we can fix that by putting padding const edge inset all 5. Yeah, and that's set the padding now so that the button is, or the icon is centered within the button. Doesn't do anything yet, but it is automatically animated for us with that highlight splash. Okay, so that's our app bar. How do we now go and move that? Well, in our widgets folder, we're going to create a new file, and we're going to call this appbar.dart. No, not appbat, appbar. And we're going to create a, we're going to extract this widget as we've done before. Extract widget, and I'm going to call it main appbar because we've already got an appbar widget, so we don't want to call it appbar again. Okay, and that extracts it down here. We can take that, cut it out, go and paste it into our AppBar, import our materials, save that. But when we save it here, well, we can't save it really, we've already got this error. We can import that, but we're still going to have an error, and that is that the AppBar can't be assigned to something that is a preferred size widget. So if we hover over body here, it says that it expects a widget and a column, a container, all sorts of things are widgets. But when we hover over AppBar, it says it expects a preferred size widget. And this is not a preferred size widget currently, but we can make it a preferred size widget by implementing preferred space preferred size widget. And then it's going to complain that it's missing some implementations, and we can fix that by doing control dot and create the one missing override. That puts down here a size. So preferred size widget has to return the size, so this is what it's returning, has to return the size of the widget, what it expects it to be. But we don't actually know what size it's going to be. I mean, we could put in here size 110. It's a size. This isn't going to work. But, okay, when we save it here, we get something, but it's not right. I mean, it's been squashed down to 10 high. So we need to somehow calculate what size we want. And the way we can go about doing that is by figuring out the height from something else. What do we want to figure it out from? Well, we know that this main is an AppBar. We know that the standard AppBar contains the preferred size because it works. So what we can do is in our AppBar.dart, we can we can pass into it an AppBar, which we'll call AppBar. And we can make that a required component of this. So we can say required, this AppBar. So now this widget expects an AppBar to be sent into it. So let's do that. From our details page, we're just going to put in an AppBar. Okay, and then back in our AppBar.dart, instead of preferred size, instead of us setting a preferred size like that, what we can do is we can say size from height, because it's really the height we want to work out here. The AppBar we've passed in, preferred size dot height. So we can take the height of the AppBar that we've passed in and pass it out again. So when we save that and this, we now have, get rid of those errors, we now have an AppBar that is the right height. Excellent. Okay, let's close that down and move on to our dates.dart, which is our date row. So what have we got here? Well, I think it's clear from our design we've got a row of boxes with each containing a date, and one of them seems to be highlighted in some way. So let's set that up. Instead of returning a container, we're going to return a row. And that row is going to contain children. And those children are going to be our boxes, which are going to be a container. And straight away, what we'll do is take that out and extract that widget, and we'll call this a date box. And we will return two of those for now, just until we get our design sorted out. Let's save that. Okay, so let's come down and work on our date box. So what have we got? Well, I think they're a fixed width and height for now. So I'm going to put a width of 50 and a height of 70. And that should give us the spacing we want. And it's very clear that we've got a border that goes around that. So already we're used to this now. We're going to put in a decoration of a box decoration. and we're going to set the border to be border.all. We want all the borders to be the same. Color, and the color is going to be 0xff E1 E1 E1. Let's save that, and now we can see our boxes on the screen. Okay, now we've got something to work with. Let's put a border radius on our box decoration, and we'll do that by putting border radius circular, and setting that to be 10. Yep, I think that looks all about right. And then within that border, within that container, we're going to put our child in, and our child is going to be a column because we've got the date and the day. So we're going to put in our children for the column, and we're going to put in text and MON for now, for Monday. We're going to then put in a text, and it's going to be the date, so 8. Let's have a look at that. Okay, so let's just format this now. Let's start with the day of the week. Split those onto separate lines. And so for our day of the week, we're going to set a style, text style. And what are we going to put in here? Well, the font's quite small, so let's do font size of 10. Yeah, I think that looks okay. And make it bold. Font weight dot bold. Okay, yeah, I think that will do. And for the number 8, let's have a look at that one. Again, we're going to have a text style. Specify the style, of course. Style, text style. And we're going to put in a font size of 30 and font weight of fontweight.w500, which is our medium text. I'm just going to drop that font size down a little, maybe 27. Yeah. Okay. Now I want to put a bit more spacing in between those two. So between the Monday and the 8, let's put a size box of height 8. It's a bit of trial and error. Next of all, we want one of these boxes to be highlighted. So for that, we're going to want to pass in whether it's active. And we've done this before, so final or active. And we're going to pass that in here, and I'm not going to make it required. I'm going to make it false by default. But it does mean we can come up here and we can set one of those to true. Doesn't matter which one at this stage. So now one of these boxes, the second one, is highlighted or is active, and we need to highlight that somehow. So within our box decoration, what we can do is add a gradient to the background, and we can say, is it active? If it is, then we're going to put in a linear gradient which has some colours, and if it's not active, we're just going to put null. We're going to set null into the gradient. Okay, that's going to give us an error because we haven't got any colours, but we can fix that. So we're going to need two colours here, and the first colour is going to be 0xff, fully opaque, 92E2FF, and the second colour is going to be 0xFF 1E BD F8, and that gives us our gradient. Fab. Gradient's going the wrong direction though, we want it to go from the top. So after the colour, within the linear gradient, we can specify the begin, and we can say alignment.top center. So it's going to start at the top, which is going to be our lighter colour, first colour, and head down to the bottom. Fantastic. Next we need to change the colour of the text. If it's highlighted, it should be white. So taking the column, which has our two text items in it, we could do this individually, we could set the colour in both of them, or we can wrap this column with a widget, which we've done before, and we can say default text style dot merge, and we can merge into it another colour. So we can say style, are you active? Yes. If you are active, we're going to put text style colour colors.white, and if you're not active, we're not going to merge any changes, we're just going to keep it as default. Save that, and we got the text changed. So the way we've used this a couple of times, I'm not sure if I've ever properly explained it. The way this works is when you have a text style, it essentially looks up the tree, the chain of the tree of widgets above it, looking for style information, and it goes to the nearest one. Now if you don't ever style it, if you don't ever put anything like this in, it basically gets all the way up to the main material app that we started with and gets all the information from there. So here it starts looking up and it comes across a text style immediately, which has been merged with the one that it finds further up the chain. Okay, I'm happy with that now as our design. Now we just need to put in all the boxes that we need. So we could put in 8 boxes here. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's about right. And within the row we can spread them out so that they're aligned properly by doing main axis alignment, space evenly. And that's looking okay. I think we want to put a bit of padding around the row. So we'll put in a padding of const edge inset symmetric on the horizontal 20, and that brings those in. Okay, so that's the layout done. What we need to look at now is the actual content of these boxes, because obviously we don't want it saying Monday the 8th all the time. And the way we're going to do that is by passing a date into each of these boxes. So as well as just wanting the active, we're going to also pass in a date time, which we're going to conveniently call date. And that is going to be required. We don't want our date time box to work without a date. Okay, so now all these are complaining that we're not passing a date in. So we need to fix that. Now, this is a list, and we can create a list in a number of different ways. And one of the ways we can create a list is by actually creating it up here and creating a list of date boxes and initializing it to something, giving it a name. We'll call it date boxes, and instead of having the list here, we can just put date boxes there, and so whatever's in here is now there. Nothing's there, so it's all going to go away, but we can write some code to put it in. So what do we want to put in? Well, we want 6 boxes, so I'm going to write a loop that's going to loop around 6 times. For int I equals 0, while I is less than 6, I plus plus. Okay, so that creates a for loop. It creates an integer which at the start of the loop is 0. It's going to do the loop until it's going to do the loop while I is less than 6, and it's going to add 1 to I every time we go around. And what do we want to do here? Well, we want to put in a date box into our date boxes array, our date boxes list, sorry. We're going to add, what are we going to add? We're going to add a date box. But now we've got to pass a date into that date box. So where are we going to get that date from? Well, we need to work out a starting date for our list. And we can do that by creating a date time element called date, and we can set that to whatever we want. And I'm going to set it to date time past, and then we can input a string which contains the date we want it to start. Now the first one here, as you can see in our design, is Monday the 8th. And so just looking through the calendar, the last Monday the 8th to now was in 2021, November the 8th. That was the last Monday that was the 8th of a month. And now we're taking that date and we're passing it in 6 times. So when we save that, we now get our boxes, but they're all Monday the 8th, and that's not quite what we want. So how do we figure out, or how do we add more? So we can take our date and we can make that equal to date dot add, and add takes a duration, and what we can do is we can add duration of days 1 and save that. So now our box is looping around and each box has got a different date, but nothing's showing up. Everything still says the 8th, and that's because down here we've hard coded Monday and 8. So let's work on the 8th first, and what we're going to do is say the date that we've passed in, let's get the day and change that to a string, because by default it's a number, it's an integer. Now when we save that, we have our dates showing correctly. And so whatever date we pass in here, that'll always be the first box, and the next boxes will always be in sequence. What about the one that needs to be active? Well, in our case, we can simply, we've got this counter. What we can do is say active if does I equal 3. Save that. And so the first time round I equals 0, 1, 2, 3. So the third one is always going to be the active one, which is the design, seems to be the design specification. Okay, now the last part is how we're going to deal with the days that are there. Well, there's a few ways of doing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new file called helpers.py. .dart. I'm going to create that in our main directory, and in there we're going to have a number of things over the course of this. Now there are better ways of doing this. There's the international package, there's various date formatting packages all available, but we're trying to do this with no packages, so this is why we're doing it this way. So within this file, I'm going to make a final map, which is going to have a key of an integer, and it's going to have a string as the value, and we're going to call this days of week. And this is going to equal a key for 1 of Monday, 2 for Tuesday, 3 for Wednesday, and so on. Let's just get this in. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and finally day 7, which is Sunday. Of course you can do this in any language you wanted. Okay, so coming back to our dates, where we've got Monday, instead of having Monday, what we're going to do is we're going to say, take the date and give us the weekday from it, which is a number. And you can see here that it says that, it gives you the example, the moon landing was on day 7, which was a Sunday. So we know that 7 is Sunday. And we're going to wrap that in the thing that we've just created. Days of week, index, day of week. And then it's complaining that this might be null. Well, we know it's never null. So we're going to just put an exclamation mark there because that's hard coded. We know that's always going to exist. So if we save that, we now have the correct days of the week showing up. Excellent. So that's good. I've just realized that the other thing that we need to do is, looking at our design, the 8 and 9 need to be prefixed with a 0. And we can do that after the date to string. We can pad left to a width of 2 with a 0. And that will make sure that a 0 that will make sure that this string is always 2 characters long. And if it's not 2 characters, it'll just add enough zeros to make it 2. Okay. The final thing I want to do is make it more relevant, this app. And so instead of passing the date like we're doing now, which you could do, let's put in today's date. We want today's date to be the one that's highlighted. So we can put now. And when I save that, you can see that it's not Friday the 28th. It is actually Friday the 25th. No, it's not. It's Tuesday the 25th. I've lost track of days completely. But that's not what we want. We want our highlighted date to be today. So what we need to do is to go 3 days into the past to be our start date. So instead of adding like we did before, we can simply subtract a duration of days 3. And that means today is highlighted. The start of our list is 3 days ago, and everything is working as should be designed. Right folks, that's a lot. We're going to leave it there for the next episode. We'll continue on this page. We're almost getting to this graph, which will be a big one itself. So I hope you've enjoyed. If you have, do leave a like. It does help me out. Thanks for watching, and hit that notification button to know when the next episode's out. And we'll see you then. All right, take care folks. Bye now.